Hello YouTube, it's me, the Killican again, and I'm here to talk about a subject in video games that I've been meaning to talk about for a long time, and that is one of my favorite kinds of video games, World War II themed video games. Now, let's face it, at this point in the history of gaming, we've all stormed up the beaches of Normandy on multiple different times, on multiple different games from multiple different franchises and developers and whatnot. But I find that one side of the story of World War II, one particular part of it, that video games, with a few rare exceptions, generally tend to, I don't know, look away from or just don't explore, is the Axis side of the story. Meaning a game where you play as, the Germans or the Japanese or the Italians. Now, I know what you're all thinking right now. I know what you're all thinking. You're like, oh, he likes the Nazis. Oh, he likes Imperial Japan and militarism and fascism. No. No, I do not like them. What I'm saying is, there are always two sides to every story, and World War II is no exception. And even viewing them as the bad guys, which I do, the Axis' side of the story really is a lot more complicated than most people think, and there's all these different dynamics and things that went into it that brought about World War II, and I think you get an equally good and thought-provoking experience from looking at any war from the perspective of the losing side. Now, granted, there are rare exceptions to this in video game, like, for instance, I'm showing you right now, Company of Heroes Opposing Fronts told the story of Operation Market Garden, the Allied invasion of Holland, from the perspective of the Germans. But the vast majority of the story-driven video games out there, your first-person shooters, your third-person shooters, your real-time strategy games, they generally just focus on the Allied soldiers, on the Americans, on the British, and even on the Russians, which kind of seems hypocritical of me in a sense, because anyone who's actually done their homework on World War II and has actually done their research on the Eastern Front and read first-hand accounts, the Soviets really weren't any better than the Germans. They really weren't. They were just as vicious, just as anti-Semitic, just as anti-Christian, just as anti-whatever Stalin disliked, or the Communist Party anyway. And they were mass-murdering maniacs just as bad as the SS. I mean, seriously, it's almost as if society and whatnot is saying, don't play as these evil, anti-Semitic, mass-murdering monsters over here, but play as these ones over here. And that is BS, If we're going to look at a war from all the different angles and, tell an interesting, thought-provoking story, we should be able to focus on all sides. And each country had a story to tell. The Germans had a story to tell, the Japanese did, and so did the Italians. And there are so many different ways that you can look at it. For example, hopefully most of you watching this are familiar with the game Far Cry 3. But a nice little side quest in that was you playing Jason Brody, the protagonist, and pick up letters that belonged to Japanese soldiers in World War II, and you learn all these details about what the Japanese soldiers went through and how, there was resistance against them by the natives of Rook Island, and how just disease and the chaos and the war just made all the Japanese soldiers go nuts and turn on each other and try to kill each other. And it's like, well, I'm playing that game, I'm thinking, you know what I want? I want them to make a spin-off video game about that. Tell these guys' stories, Anyway, feel free to go ahead and post comments, and thank you all for watching.